Hi everybody, this is Ellie. Thanks so much for joining me today for a video where I finally share my long-term collections and notes setup. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll have heard me mention this on and off for the past few months, which is about how long I've been working on it. As you'll see, it's not especially complicated. It's just something that I've come to here and there when I'm in the mood and really had fun with taking my time setting it up. I was also waiting until it was done, but I realized that it's a living, not document, but a living setup, and it'll constantly be evolving and I'll be adding to it and it'll never actually be done. So I'm at a point where I have everything that I want in it right now. So I'm happy to share, and I know that it will continue to grow. So the idea behind this setup itself is that I use a bullet journal for my daily planning. And part of the bullet journal method is keeping collections. So I'm a list maker. I have always loved making lists. And some collections for me are more long-term. So for example, things like lists of books that I want to read or things to check out, like recommendations. I know that I don't want to have to transfer that information from bullet journal to bullet journal. So what I've decided to do is dedicate a notebook entirely to that, to lists that I want to keep long-term and be able to add to over months or maybe even years, and also to keep a note section of things that I've read that are important to me or really resonate with me, and I'll show you how I have those two different sections in here. This cover is a Gillio Appunto in the A6 size, and it's the dark brown Epoca leather. It's absolutely beautiful, and I've had it for a while but couldn't quite figure out how I wanted to use it. But when the idea of the long-term collections came up, I knew this would be perfect. Inside, I have a Hobonichi plain notebook in the A6 size. On the front, I have a sticker from EurekartStudio, and I've used my friend's DYMO label maker to type out collections. Here, I've decorated the pockets with some ephemera that I have. This is a card from an order from Brie at Documented Journey. I have an old gift card from Winners with the Canadian flag on it. A self-care sticker from sarahfrancesart on Etsy, a couple of label stickers here that I got in a pack from FairyMilkBar, and this card that came with a purchase from Mona at ghostpuff. I really like the yellows and the neutral tones here. I have a Hobonichi A6, one of these folders in here. I'm not quite sure if I'm actually going to keep anything in here, but for the time being, that fits really nicely and I'm going to leave it. This has the big back pocket, which I don't have anything in right now, and I don't think I'll keep anything in it for this setup, but it's always handy to have. I don't have anything in the back section here, just the notebook slipped in to the one side. This pen is a Uni Jetstream in the slim body from Tokyo Pen Shop. The refills in here are 0.38, which is primarily what I used for my notes in here. Before we start, I will quickly just go through the pens and Tombows that you will see in here, just so that you have a reference point for how they look. So like I said, my main pen is the Uni Jetstream. I will also be using the 0.5. I did use them interchangeably. At first I didn't remember that this one was actually a 0.38. So they're both great. I love these pens. I do find that the 0.38 skips a little bit more for me. That's never a problem with the 0.5. These Tombows are some of my favorites. They came in a pack of, I believe it was 20 neutrals, which I will link down below. The 992 is the one that I used primarily, and the other ones I've used throughout the setup as well, so you'll be able to see how those look. And lastly, I also used my trusty fine liners. These are the Le Pen Technical Drawing Pens, and they're my favorite fine liners. I use the 0.03, 0.05, and 0.1. Now, into the notebook itself. I just slipped the back cover in because I love how this looks. Another sticker from EurekartStudio, and my quote for the year, "May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears," by Nelson Mandela. I did glue both the front and back pages down just because I don't like how the first page only partially opens. So I mentioned that I have both collections and notes in this setup. What I've done is separated them. So I have all my collections at the front of the notebook, and this tab in the middle here is where my notes start. So it made sense for me to make an index for each of those sections. So this first index is for my collections, and the second index is for my notes. This notebook doesn't come with the pages numbered, so I just went through and numbered them myself. This notebook honestly is one of my favorite setups that I've ever done, and it's simple and neutral, but it just makes me happy. So the first page is spreads to try, and that's really any bullet journal spreads that I want to try either in here or in my daily bullet journal. I just left one page to make a list. I am doing a word of the year every year, so I've just called it One Little Word, which is from a blog by Ali Edwards, and I've put 2020's word of the year, which is discomfort. I figure the rest of the page, I can just add in the different words that I choose each year. You'll also see I've done some really minimal decorations. I found an image on Pinterest that had these kind of beautiful little backgrounds with simple line work botanicals on them. I thought it was so pretty I'd try and do it myself. I followed the link, and it's by ZainabMughalArts on Etsy, and I think she sells them as like Instagram highlight covers, so that's where they came from, but I just tried to make them my own. This page says celebrate, and it's for birthdays and anniversaries of the people in my life. I just blocked it off. I used 3 different Tombow colors in kind of a gradation, and I just love how that looked and having this all in one space. This is a gift tracker. If you've watched my previous videos, I've tried to keep gift ideas in one spot. This is not that. This is an actual tracker for the gifts that we have given people, because what I have found is that I don't always remember what I've gifted people in the past. So this is a really helpful way for me to just keep on top of that. And I just started this in April, so it's pretty empty. We've moved into books that I want to read. I've separated this into different categories. So here I have fiction, nonfiction, YA, so young adult, and romance. Those are the 4 main categories that I do read, and I'm really happy with this setup. The plan is to just write the title and the author's name, and I believe I will highlight them with a Tombow once I'm done reading them. And because I have the space, I might also actually write the date that they're finished. This is my original bullet journal, and this is one of my absolute favorite spreads ever. I just love having it in order like that, separated by kind of just the dividing line, and what I would do is highlight them when I finished, or just kind of cross them out if I no longer wanted to read them. I debated doing that in here, but the grid is already so small that I think it just would have looked super cluttered to my eye. I do still think I'll keep the highlighting and then just use, like I said, the extra space for a date. Here I have a space for yearly reading lists. This is the first year that I actually chose 8 books from my shelf and decided I wanted to challenge myself to read those 8 books in 2020. So I've listed them all here and then left space for future book lists if I do the same thing. TV shows that I'd like to watch. Things to check out. So these are recommendations. I'll write down whatever it is and who it was recommended by. I still have to go through my comments for the recommendations I got when I asked for kind of brain games or brain training apps or things to do, because I got a lot of good suggestions and I want to keep them in here. movies, a wish list. I drew a little dandelion for that one. Here I have an Instagram growth tracker and a YouTube growth tracker. I just have written kind of different numbers. I'm not really super focused on this, but I do like the idea of having a tracker and being able to color it in. I think that was honestly the biggest appeal. I love using the different Tombows here. I also did a highlight underneath because I thought I would write the dates when I hit certain milestones, but that hasn't happened at all. I just haven't kept track of it like that. And at the bottom, I did actually put a tracker where I could write the numbers. So if I check it, we're in August now, so if I check it on maybe September 1st, I can write the number here, and that way I'll be able to see the growth. The numbers themselves aren't really important to me, but it is fun to see the growth. And as this channel has been growing and my Instagram has been growing, I've just met so many wonderful people, and it's so lovely to connect with all of you guys. I don't know if I'll continue as many years as I put here, but I had the space, so I figure it could be fun to see growth over time. And the last spread in my collections page is some Canadian slow fashion brands. That's something that I'm looking into more and more, so as I read about them and find information, I will write that here. And I think I'll leave a little bit of space for maybe sizing in these companies when I do get certain pieces. And if you're interested more in this, I follow Erin from My Green Closet, and she has some wonderful content, so I will post her channel and Instagram down below. So after that, it's just lots more space for more collections before it goes to my notes page. So what's handy in this Hobonichi notebook is that the grid color actually changes every, I think it's 60 pages I read, but it changes every quarter of the book basically. So I just went to where it changed from blue to, is this considered green? And decided that would be where I started my notes. I have this vellum that I got from Mrs. Brimbles' Etsy shop, and I wrote, write it down. These tabs are mini metallic tabs from Avery, and I love these tabs. I've used them before, and they last a really long time. You may have seen this. I put this on a card as well in my standard setup. It's from Danielle Doby's collection of poetry, and it says, "You are a match for your mountain." And I found a simple line art mountain piece online that I did my best to recreate. I also already touched on the note section and said that it is things that I want to remember or things that resonate with me. It's primarily based on self-care. I like having the information that I learn condensed and kept in one spot because I'm someone who needs to keep reading it during certain times. If I'm stressed, if I'm anxious, having a place I know that I can come to that has a lot of the information I'm looking for is really helpful and reassuring to me. A lot of this is general, some of it's specific. So I have coping strategies for when I'm feeling especially anxious. I also have some questions that I ask myself when the anxiety is causing me to feel physical sensations. You'll also see some stickers in here. These are from the Happy Planner Homebody sticker book. I mention this book all the time because it's one of my all-time favorites. The stickers and the colors just went perfectly with the Tombows and just the kind of calm and neutral vibe I wanted in here. Across from my coping strategies, I have coping statements, affirmations. I've never really been big on affirmations. I tend to prefer coping statements, but I do want to give these a try. I have a spread on how to do the work by the holistic psychologist on Instagram. I really love her account, so this is a really nice reminder. I'll link her down below as well. Anxiety feels like, just a reminder sometimes of the physical sensations of anxiety. So instead of thinking, oh no, something's wrong, I can ground myself and remember that anxiety can also cause some super uncomfortable physical sensations. This is, I called it relapse prevention. It's just things that I know to look for myself that are kind of a red flag that my anxiety is higher than normal or I'm feeling stressed, and what I can do when I do notice those signs. This is just kind of statements that I can say to myself when anxiety is high. This is a Venn diagram of the states of mind. I've talked about this in a previous video, but it's from dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's the idea that we have 3 states of mind: reasonable mind, wise mind, and emotion mind. I really like this reminder here because I do try to stay balanced, or at the very least recognize when I'm in, it's usually emotion mind, but if I'm kind of unbalanced. These are some distress tolerance techniques. These are based on the 5 senses, so vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Things like, you know, vision could be looking at nature, go people watching, hearing, music, smell, like a scented candle, baking, things like that. So I really like having these reference points. Same with this one, mind, body, and spirit, things I can do to fill my mind, my body, my spirit. If there are any questions that you have about any of this, please do feel free to ask down below, or you can message me on Instagram. Things I can control. I found this on Pinterest and I adapted it for myself. So things like my thoughts, my beliefs, my attitude, you know, the food I eat, the content I consume, whether or not I dare greatly. That's from Brene Brown's book. Emotions, just kind of how emotions function, and the idea of acknowledging them and riding the wave. This is just kind of emotional literacy. It just goes through a bunch of different emotions and breaks them down even further. So I called it How Do I Feel? So for example, what I might describe as happiness could actually be more specific if I wanted, maybe joy, relief, hope, satisfaction. I just like the idea of kind of being able to be even more aware of what I'm feeling. Self-care, these are notes that I've had in my bullet journal before about self-judgment, self-compassion, how unhelpful comparisons are, and radical acceptance. Dialectical behavioral therapy, this big and always reminds me that there's more than one way to think about a situation, and 2 opposing views can be true at the same time, which I think is super helpful in this kind of time when things can get really, really polarized. I have a section on body neutrality. This is a new concept to me. I heard it for the first time this year in the I Weigh podcast by Jamila Jamil, and it rings so true for me personally. So it's something I'm learning more about, and I've just been writing notes to keep as a reference point. Lastly, I have some notes on my morning routine based off the book Good Morning, Good Life by Amy Landino. I incorporate movement, mindfulness, and mastery, and she has what she calls the Shine Master List, which is ideas for each of those categories. So I've written out the ones that I think would be helpful for me or that I might want to try. And I also have the 12 tips for healthy sleep. That's the end of my notes section. So again, lots of space to be able to add in more as things come up. The last tab I put in is I left some pen test pages at the back because I do like to know how my pens perform on Tomoe River paper, which is my favorite, and I figured this would be a good place to keep track of that. So fountain pens and inks, brush pens, fine liners, gel pens, ballpoint pens, and this section here is to keep track of my Tombow dual brush pens. So I just printed this from the Tombow website at 50%, and it's great. I printed the one that has kind of the categories of colors. as well as the one that has them all in order by their numbers. So it's all the same colors on each one, it's just organized differently. I like being able to find them, first of all, by number, because sometimes it's hard when I'm looking around. And I also like to see the groupings, so I know kind of what I need, what I like, what I want to try, what's not working. Really, really fun. Here I just put testing 1, 2, 3. It's just for any kind of scribble. Sometimes I need to really loop and write things a few times to see. And on the back, like I mentioned, I glued this page down. I just have my grid kind of spacing cheat sheet where I write the numbers across. I did 1 to 26. I could have done 27 for this grid, but I didn't. It just felt a little unbalanced. I don't know. I don't imagine I ever really need to worry about that. So I wrote 26 this way. Technically it's 27 and 39 down. So a lot of space in these Hobonichi notebooks because the grid is so small. I am super, super happy with this setup. Like I mentioned, I think it's going to be so functional and so fun to keep adding to. I'm not going to carry this around with me. This will stay at my desk. Usually if something is recommended to me or I come across it, I'll either jot it in my bullet journal or maybe take a screenshot if it's online. And the idea is just that now I have a place to transfer all of that so it can be collected in one place. So this is my long-term collections and notes setup. I do also plan at some point to make a really small insert to go with my everyday carry, and it'll just be a true reference insert. Mostly things that I would ever need in case of an emergency, like emergency contact information, medical information for my partner or I, anything like that. I did think about originally including that in here, but I realized I do need to keep that on me, and I've seen a few videos that show how people have kind of that information together. I watched one by Amanda at Ink Imperfections. Donna has showed hers on Instagram. She's at Blush and Blue, and Dakshana recently showed one of hers as well. So I've kind of separated that a little bit into collections here and like emergency reference information in a setup to come. Always a reason for another setup, right guys? If you do have any questions about the setup or any of my notes pages or anything, please do feel free to ask. And yeah, I guess you'll maybe see this guy in future. I'm not sure if I'll show him too much because I'll just be adding to the categories I've already put in, but I will be using him. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.